The Contention form, the way of the Ysalamiri. The first and most basic description of Makashi was provided in the Lightsaber article written by David West Reynolds and Jack Bobo, and published in Star Wars Insider 27, and it reads as follows. The ultimate refinement of lightsaber to lightsaber combat became Form 2, advancing the precision of blade manipulation to its finest possible degree and producing the greatest dueling masters the galaxy has ever seen. Today, Form 2 is an archaism studied by almost no one in the Jedi Order, because it is not relevant to current tactical situations, in which Jedi enemies rarely fight with lightsabers. Even with the resurgence of the Sith, confrontation of an enemy with a lightsaber is an exceedingly rare prospect for a Jedi, so they continue to focus on more practical forms. Sith expecting to battle lightsaber-wielding Jedi, however, find Form 2 a powerful technique. The physical technique of Makashi is primarily detailed in the Attack of the Clones novelization and the Jedi Path. In both, it is described as a linear cut-and-thrust style based around precision blade work and balanced footwork. The duelist keeps his feet in line with one another, advancing and retreating along this line, controlling the distance between the combatants and keeping the opponent at arm's length. The blade work was largely one-handed, consisting of wrist flick parries and thrusts. Makashi shared with the later Surisu form an emphasis on energy conservation and efficient defense, but where Surisu was very passive, the style characterized by rapid and smooth transitions between basic blocking positions, Makashi was based around an active defense, slapping aside attacks with deflection parries. This emphasis carried over to Makashi's offensive component, which was based around undermining and bypassing an opponent's defenses through the use of feints and binds, oftentimes engaging an opponent's blade and forcing it out of line to open up their defenses. According to the Essential Guide to the Force, Masters of Makashi developed unique offenses and defenses, and trained studiously against having their weapon taken or damaged. Ironically, classical Form 2 masters are noted for being especially proficient at executing disarming strikes. The example stance provided in Star Wars lightsabers is the Makashi opening stance, a single-handed low guard with the blade angled downwards on the dominant side. The impression I have is that the duelist is intended to face the opponent side-on with the blade pointed towards them, though we see Count Dooku often facing the opponent square-on with his blade off to the side. The example stance provided in the Essential Guide to the Force is a single-handed middle guard position, arm fully extended, blade held vertical, facing the opponent side-on. Given Form 2's roots in ceremonial duels, one of its classical moves was a salute and accompanying flourish. Actual live combat maneuvers were described in the Jedi Academy training manual. The first was the contentious opportunity, where the duelist would exploit an opening in an opponent's defense by darting in to deliver an attack, likely an immediate retaliation following an evasive maneuver. The second was the Makashi riposte, a counter-move based around deflecting aside an opponent's attack in order to open up their defenses. Given Form 2's technical focus and its emphasis on fluidity and control, its core disciplines were very pragmatic, based more on tactical considerations and skill rather than the nature of the duelist's relationship with the Force. As Dooku described in Labyrinth of Evil, and I quote, "A player of Jajaric could memorize all the classic openings and countermoves, and still not be a master of the game. Defeat often came at the hands of less experienced players who knew nothing about traditional strategies. A professional fighter, a combat artist, could be defeated by a cantina brawler who knew nothing about form, but everything about ending a conflict quickly, without a thought to winning gracefully or elegantly. enslavement to form opened one to defeat by the unforeseen. This is where Makashi's emphasis on developing unique offenses and defenses came from, avoiding stagnation through personalization. Ironically, or perhaps appropriately, they tended to be combat aestheticists, deeply preoccupied with elegance and grace. As Dooku put it, finesse, artfulness, economy. Even after Makashi was phased out by the Jedi Order, it continued to be regarded as the most disciplined of the 7 forms. Darth Treya's commentary on the practical merits of Makashi was as follows. A technique that helps one resist the force attacks of an enemy and is also excellent for lightsaber combat. It does more damage, but it leaves you vulnerable to other attacks. Use it against others wielding the Force or lightsabers, but not against anyone else. Accordingly, Makashi was exclusively a dueling style intended for single combat with a lightsaber-wielding opponent, and was not intended for the open battlefield. Despite this, Makashi experienced its heyday during the ancient wars with the Sith, its fluid attacks and feints providing a critical edge in melee combat against the Dark Lords. However, its failure to address blast deflection led to it being rendered obsolete, and during the Republic Golden Age, it saw use only in ceremonial duels and sparring matches, such as the mid-year feat at the Jedi Temple. An amateur-level application of Makashi was demonstrated by the fugitive Jedi Knight Jax Pavan during a duel with the Jedi Hunter Aura Singh, a basic attack sequence he had learned early on in his training. By his own admission, these moves weren't much of a threat, as they were designed as defense against an opposing lightsaber. This is corroborated by an update on the Fightsaber article released on StarWars.com back in 2008, which described Makashi as primarily defense-oriented and needing to be paired off with a more aggressive form to decisively end a conflict. I personally view this as applying exclusively to amateur-level applications, as true mastery of Makashi makes for a much more effective and balanced fighting method. Makashi's emphasis on developing unique offenses and defenses was best reflected by Count Dooku's application, his personal style being extremely flexible and diversified. TCW depicts his application of classical Makashi technique, the cut-and-thrust style, while the films depicted him employing a more contemporary take on Form 2, with sweeping circular slashes paired off with balletic spins and twirls, but all with the same quintessential focus on efficiency and grace. Obviously, Makashi was originally intended to cater to the standard lightsaber, but its unique practical requirements led to the development of specialized dueling lightsabers, the primary example being the curved hilt. These pistol-grip lightsabers fit better into one's palm, providing improved control and leverage, and the forward angle of the blade lined it up with the wielder's forearm, reinforcing the thrust-centric blade work. We've actually seen Makashi employed with dual sabers in the hands of Asajj Ventress. However, the intricate swordplay left a significant risk of the two blades getting tangled with one another, which forced Ventress to compensate by simplifying the blade work. While she still abided by the traditional Makashi approach of taking the path of least resistance, her typical tactic being to engage the opponent's blade with one of her weapons and attack his exposed flank with the other, she lacked the finesse and refinement possessed by true masters. Due to these hurdles, in my view, the Shoto is a much more effective offhand weapon for a Makashi specialist than a full-length lightsaber. While the more contemporary version of Form 2 that Dooku demonstrated in his film appearances could conceivably be adapted for the saber staff, traditional Makashi is completely incompatible. The extra blade calls for exaggerated movements to maneuver the weapon, undermining the efficiency at the core of Makashi technique and making thrusts extremely difficult to perform. While we do witness Asajj Ventress employing a double blader, I think it's more likely that she simply switched over to one of the more modern lightsaber forms that she studied under Kai Narek. Considering how completely one would have to revise the Makashi technique to make it compatible with the saber staff, I say you'd be better off studying Form 5. The most heavily featured Makashi specialist in Star Wars media is Count Dooku, who appears in 2 out of the 6 films and provides the best demonstrations of orthodox technique in live combat, the most notable being his appearances in Star Wars The Clone Wars. The second most heavily featured specialist would be Asajj Ventress, who appears in both the Star Wars Clone Wars microseries and TCW, though her applications of Makashi are decidedly non-traditional. Another noteworthy figure would be Inquisitor Jarek, the primary antagonist of the video game Dark Forces Jedi Knight.